He let her believe he had nothing, until the day someone called him by the name she was never supposed to hear. "Mr. Hale!" The shout cuts across the dry field, sharp as a gun crack. Iris's shovel slips from her hands and hits the ground with a dull thud. Dust lifts around her boots. The man on the horse reins in hard, breathless, staring straight at the quiet drifter beside her. Luke doesn't turn, doesn't move. The wind presses against his coat, the one she gave him, like it's trying to pull something loose. Then Iris finally looks at him, slow, steady, like she's already starting to understand something she never asked to know. Would you trust him after this? The wind came early that morning, pushing red dust through every crack in the boards, as if the land itself had something to say. It rattled the loose tin on the roof and slipped under the door in thin, restless lines. Iris Bennett stood at the small kitchen table, one hand wrapped around a chipped enamel cup gone cold hours ago, watching the light come up slow over Dust Hollow. There wasn't much to see. A dry yard, a leaning fence, the outline of hills that looked close enough to touch but never were. Her boots sat by the door, still carrying yesterday's dirt. She hadn't brushed them off. There didn't seem much point. Out back, the wind creaked the gate again. Same as always. She set the cup down and stepped outside, pulling her shawl tighter. The cold bit quick before the sun could take hold. Somewhere off to the east, a crow called once and then went quiet. That was when she saw him. He stood just beyond the gate, hat low, coat worn thin at the elbows. Dust clung to him like it belonged there. His boots had seen too many roads. He didn't move closer right away. Just waited, one hand resting on the post, like he'd been standing there a while. Iris didn't hurry. "You lost?" she called. The man shook his head once. His voice, when it came, was steady but rough around the edges. "Name's Luke Walker," he said. "I'm looking for work, just through the harvest. I'll take what you've got to give." The wind pushed between them again. Iris stepped closer to the gate, studying him. His hands told more truth than his words. Calloused, scarred, a man who knew tools, not just how to talk about them. "You picked the wrong place," she said. "I don't pay wages, not real ones." He didn't blink. "Meals and a place to sleep is fine." She let that sit. Most men would have asked how many meals, or how warm the place was. He didn't. "There's a barn," she said. "Roof holds most nights. Food's plain. Some days there's less of it." "That'll do." He said it like he meant it. Iris pushed the gate open with her boot. The hinge groaned loud in the quiet. "You can start with the north fence," she said. "If you walk off, I won't come looking." "I won't," he said. He stepped through like a man crossing into something that mattered, even if it didn't look like much. By midday, the sun had burned through the worst of the cold. Iris carried a dented tin bucket across the yard, water sloshing against the sides. Luke worked along the fence line, shoulders steady, movements careful. He didn't rush, didn't waste effort either. She watched him for a moment before setting the bucket down. "Break," she said. He nodded once and followed her toward the house. Inside, the kitchen held the faint smell of yesterday's bread. Iris ladled stew into 2 bowls. Not much in it. Beans. A bit of salt pork if you were lucky enough to find it. Luke took his bowl and turned toward the back door without thinking. "Where do you think you're going?" Iris asked. He paused, half-turned. "Didn't want to be in your way." Iris set her spoon down with a soft clink. "You work my land, you eat at my table." He hesitated. She pulled the chair out with her foot and nudged it toward him. "Sit." The word wasn't sharp, but it didn't leave room for argument. Luke set the bowl down and lowered himself into the chair. Careful, like it might give way under him. He kept his hat in his hands. They ate in silence at first. The wind scratched at the walls. The clock in the corner ticked slow and uneven. Iris noticed the way he took his time. Not greedy, not cautious either. Just steady. "You always travel alone?" she asked without looking up. "Most times." "You got family?" He paused just long enough to be noticed. "Not nearby." She nodded once. Didn't ask again. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Light spilled across the table, catching the edge of his bowl, the rough line of his hands. For a moment, nothing felt rushed. Not the work waiting, not the debts sitting folded under a cup in the corner. Just two people eating. Luke set his spoon down when he finished. "Thank you," he said. Iris shrugged, already rising. "Don't make a thing of it." But she didn't miss the way he stayed seated a moment longer than needed. Like getting up too fast might break something he didn't quite understand yet. That night, the wind settled into a low, steady hum. The sky cleared, stars coming out sharp over the hollow. Luke lay on a bed of hay in the barn, staring up through a gap in the boards where the sky showed through. His coat wasn't enough for the cold. He knew that before he closed his eyes. Somewhere beyond the hills, tied to a lone juniper, a fine horse stamped its foot and tugged against a good leather rein. No one here had seen it. No one here knew. Victor Hale turned his head slightly against the hay, the name sitting quiet in his chest like something he had buried on purpose. He had walked the last mile on foot, left the saddle, left the ranch, left the name. Now he listened to the creak of a poor man's barn and the distant sound of a gate tapping in the wind. For the first time in years, no one had looked at him like they needed something. And for reasons he couldn't quite put into words, that felt heavier than anything he owned. In the house, Iris blew out the lamp and stood a moment in the dark. The chair across from hers was empty again. She looked at it longer than she meant to. Then she turned away and went to bed. Outside, the wind moved softer now, like it had said what it needed to say. Morning came slow and gray, the kind that didn't promise much but showed up anyway. Iris was already outside when the sun pushed over the ridge, a tin pail in one hand, a hammer tucked under her arm. The north fence leaned worse than it had the day before. It always did. Wood dried out here. Nails gave up. Luke was there before her. He had the post set upright, one boot braced against it, shoulders working steady as he drove the hammer down. Each strike landed clean. No wasted swing, no hurry. Iris stopped a few steps back, watching. "You eat?" she asked. He nodded once without looking up. She set the pail down near the line. Didn't say anything else. Just picked up a coil of wire and went to work on the next break. They worked side by side like that, not talking much, passing tools when needed. The sound of metal and wood carried across the dry land, mixing with the wind. By midday, the sun pressed down hard. Heat rose from the ground in wavering lines. Iris poured water from the pail into a dented cup and held it out without looking. Luke took it. Their fingers brushed, just a touch. He pulled his hand back quick, like he'd reached too far. She didn't comment. "Pump's been failing," she said instead. "Back well's worse. I'll take a look after this." She gave a short nod. No promise in it. Just a plan. In town, the boards outside the mercantile creaked under their boots. The place smelled of flour, leather, and stale coffee. Iris kept her list folded tight in her hand, reading it once before stepping up to the counter. Luke stood a step behind her, close enough to carry the sack, far enough not to crowd. Two men leaned against a post near the door, watching. One of them tipped his hat just enough to be noticed. His eyes slid from Iris to Luke and back again. "Didn't know you were taking on drifters now," he said, voice low, but not low enough. Iris didn't turn right away. She finished counting coins into the clerk's palm, took her receipt, folded it once, and then she faced him. "He works," she said. The man smirked, shifting his weight. "That's so." She stepped closer. Not fast, not loud, just enough. "He's done more honest work this week than you've done all summer," she said. "That's enough for me." Silence followed. The other man cleared his throat and looked away. The first one's smile faded, just a little. Iris turned her back on them like they weren't worth another second. Luke picked up the sack, didn't say a word. Outside, the sun hit hard again. They walked back along the dusty road, the town falling behind them. "You didn't have to do that," he said after a while. She kept her eyes forward. "Yes, I did." That was all. That night, the cold came faster. The wind had teeth again, slipping under the barn door, finding every gap in the boards. Luke sat on the edge of the hay, rubbing his hands together, breath showing faint in the air. He didn't complain, didn't expect to. The door creaked open behind him. Iris stepped in, carrying something over her arm. The lantern light caught the shape of it before he could. A coat. Wool. Thick. Worn, but cared for. She held it out. "This was my husband's," she said. "Daniel." Luke didn't reach for it right away. "I can manage," he said. She gave him a look that stopped him where he sat. "No one works my land and freezes doing it," she said. "Take it." He stood slowly, took the coat like it weighed more than it should. His hands ran over the fabric, pausing at a mended seam near the shoulder. "Thank you," he said, quieter this time. She nodded once and turned back toward the door. He slipped the coat on after she left. It fit. Too well. He stood there a long moment, the weight of it settling across his shoulders. Not just the wool, something else. In the house, Iris sat at the table with her cup, watching the lamp flicker low. The chair across from her stayed empty again. But the space felt different. Not filled. Not yet. Just not as hollow. Out in the barn, Luke lay back against the hay, pulling the coat tighter around him. The cold still found its way in, but not like before. Somewhere beyond the hills, a better coat hung in a fine house. A fire burned steady. A table stretched long and quiet. He closed his eyes. Tonight, he did not picture that place. He pictured a small table, 2 bowls, a chair pulled out without asking, and for reasons he could not quite name, that stayed with him longer than anything else. The wind moved through the hollow again, softer now, like it had decided to wait. The mornings came quicker after that. Cold still held the ground at dawn, but the days stretched longer, and the work never seemed to end. Iris rose before the light most days. By the time the sun touched the ridge, Luke was already out by the well, sleeves rolled, hands working the stubborn handle that groaned like it resented being asked. Water came up slow, always had. He adjusted something down at the base one morning. Didn't say what. Just knelt there with a wrench and a strip of leather, tightening, testing, tightening again. When the bucket came up fuller than usual, Iris noticed. She didn't ask. She just poured the water into the barrel and moved on. The paper came folded sharp, tucked under the edge of the door like it had business being there. Iris found it before breakfast, stood there with it in her hand, thumb running once along the crease before she opened it. The seal at the top read Dawson and Company Bank, Silver Creek Branch. She read it once, then again. No change the second time. 30 days. She stepped inside, set the paper down on the table, and placed her cup on top of it. The chipped enamel covered the number like it might quiet it. Luke came in a few minutes later, brushing dust from his hands. "Fence is holding," he said. She nodded. "Good." He poured himself a bit of coffee from the pot. It had gone bitter from sitting too long. He drank it anyway. Neither of them mentioned the paper, but when she moved past him, her shoulder brushed the table, and the cup shifted just enough for the corner of the notice to show. Luke saw the bank's name. Didn't need to see the rest. They worked harder after that. Not faster. Just longer. Iris stayed out past the point where the light turned thin and gray. Luke didn't tell her to stop. Didn't step in front of her tools. He just worked beside her, matching her pace. One afternoon, the sun sat high and mean over the field. A calf had gone down near the far edge where the ground dipped and held a little moisture. Luke waded into the mud without a word, boots sinking deep. He lifted the animal slow, careful not to startle it, hands steady under its weight. Iris stood on the edge, watching. "Easy," she said, not loud. He nodded once, guiding the calf back onto firmer ground. When he climbed out, mud clung to him up to the knees. He didn't brush it off right away. "You've done that before," she said. "Once or twice." She studied him a moment longer than usual, then handed him the rope without another word. That night, the wind came back stronger. Luke stepped out of the barn, pulling the wool coat tighter around him. The sky stretched wide and clear, stars sharp enough to feel close. He looked north, past the south, the low hills, past the dry wash that cut through the land. Somewhere out there, beyond 2 days' ride, lights would be burning in a house built from good timber. Men would be tending fires, checking stock, waiting for orders that hadn't come. His orders. He could ride there by morning, could be back before the week was out. He could walk into Dawson's Bank in Silver Creek, lay down enough money to clear Iris's debt before the man behind the counter finished his coffee. It would take less than a day, less than a thought. He stayed where he was. The wind pressed against his back, urging him nowhere. In town, a few days later, Sheriff Tom Briggs stood outside the livery, one hand resting on the rail. He watched as Iris and Luke crossed the street with a sack of feed between them. Luke kept his head down, not hiding, just not offering anything. Tom's eyes narrowed a touch. "Seen you before?" he called out. Luke paused, shifted the sack higher on his shoulder. "Don't think so," he said. Tom stepped closer, boots slow on the boards. He studied Luke's face like a man trying to place a memory that wouldn't sit still. "Maybe I'm mistaken," Tom said finally. "Maybe," Luke answered. Iris didn't stop walking. Luke followed her without looking back. Tom stood there a moment longer than needed, then turned away. That evening, Iris unfolded the paper again. The number didn't change. She smoothed it flat with her palm, then folded it back up just as carefully, slid it under the cup again. Luke stood in the doorway, watching. "You got time," he said. She didn't look up. Time's just another word for not enough of it. He stepped inside, then stopped. Words sat in his throat, heavy, waiting. He could fix it, right now, all of it. Instead, he picked up the kettle and moved it closer to the fire. "You'll find a way," he said. She let out a breath that might have been a laugh if it had gone any further. "Always do." But she didn't sound convinced. Later in the dark, Luke lay awake on the hay, the coat pulled up to his chin. The wind moved through the boards again, softer now. Waiting. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. All he could see was that paper under the cup, and the way her hand had covered it. Like if she couldn't see it, it might not be real. He knew better. He also knew he was letting it sit there, and for the first time since he had walked up to her gate, in a borrowed coat and a borrowed name. The weight of that choice pressed down harder than anything he owned. He turned onto his side, facing the dark, and stayed there. Quiet, waiting for something he wasn't sure he deserved to find. It came in the middle of the afternoon, when the light turned pale and flat, and every sound carried farther than it should. Iris was out by the south field, driving the edge of a shovel into dry ground that didn't want to give. Luke worked a few yards off, tightening wire along a sagging line, the rhythm of his hands steady, almost stubborn. The sound of hooves broke the pattern, not the slow kind that passed by on the road. This was fast, direct. Both of them looked up. A rider came over the low rise without slowing, dust trailing behind him in a long line. The horse was lathered, sides dark with sweat. The man in the saddle sat straight, like he knew exactly where he was going. He pulled hard at the reins near the fence, the horse sliding to a stop. "Mr. Hale!" the man called, voice carrying clean across the field. "There you are, sir." The word hung there. Sir. Luke didn't move. Iris didn't speak. She just set the shovel down, brushed her hands once against her skirt. Slow, careful. Then she looked at him. Not confused, not surprised. Just looking. "Hale," she said, quiet. "Is that your name now?" Luke, Victor, didn't answer right away. The man on the horse swung down, breath still heavy. "We've been looking all over for you. The North Range is—" "That's enough," Luke said. The words were calm, but they landed hard. The rider stopped mid-sentence, eyes shifting between them. He tipped his hat slightly, uncertain now. Iris turned away first. She walked back toward the house without a word. Luke followed. Each step felt longer than it should have. Inside, the air held still. The table sat where it always did. The cup still covered the folded paper. Iris moved to the peg near the door, took down the wool coat. She folded it once, then again, held it out. "You wore that," she said, her voice even, "while I counted pennies." Luke took the coat. His hands didn't shake, but they didn't settle either. "Iris?" "No," she said, not loud. "You don't get to start there." She stepped back, giving him space he hadn't earned. "What kind of man does that?" she asked. The question didn't rise. It didn't break. It stayed low. That made it worse. Luke swallowed once. "I should have told you." She let out a short breath. Not quite a laugh. "Yes." Silence stretched. Outside, the rider shifted his weight, boots scraping dirt. The horse snorted, impatient. Luke set the coat on the table, carefully. "My name is Victor Hale," he said. "I own the ranch north of here, the big one." "I know the one," Iris said. Of course she did. Everyone did. He nodded once, like that part didn't matter. "I didn't come here as that man. You came here as a lie." He didn't argue. "I came because I needed to know something," he said. She crossed her arms. "And what was that?" He looked at her then, fully. No hiding left in it. "If anyone could see me without it," he said. "Without the land. Without the name." The room stayed quiet. "I was going to marry once," he went on. "She didn't want me. She wanted what came with me." Iris didn't move. "I heard it," he said, clear as anything. After that, everything changed. He glanced at the table, at the cup, at the paper underneath it. "I couldn't tell the difference anymore," he said, "between someone wanting me and someone needing what I could give." Iris listened, didn't soften. "And you thought I'd make a good test," she said, No, he said. I thought you were the only one who wouldn't care. That landed, but it didn't fix anything. You let me give, she said slowly. Food, work, that coat. She nodded toward it. All of it. Her voice didn't rise. It just settled deeper. You sat at my table, she said, knowing you could buy this whole place and never notice the cost. Luke took a step forward. She stepped back. You let me believe I had more than you, she said. Even for a little while. The words stayed between them, heavy. I was wrong, he said. He didn't reach for anything, didn't offer anything, just stood there. I wanted to know the truth, he said, and I went about it the worst way a man can. Iris looked at him a long time. The wind moved outside again, pushing against the walls, then easing off. I understand why you did it, she said. He let out a breath. That doesn't make it right. The breath didn't come back. You made me small in my own house, she said, and you didn't even have to try. That was the part that stayed. Luke lowered his gaze. I know. Silence again. Then she moved past him, opening the door. Take your coat, she said, and go. He didn't argue. Didn't ask for time. He picked up the coat, hesitated just long enough to look at her once more. She didn't meet his eyes. Outside, the rider stepped back as Luke approached. Confusion sat plain on his face, but he didn't speak. Luke mounted without help. The horse turned easy under him. He looked back once. Iris stood in the doorway, one hand resting against the frame. Still, he nodded. Just once. Then he rode. The dust settled slow after they were gone. Iris stayed where she was until the sound of hooves disappeared into the distance. Then she closed the door. Inside, the table waited. The chair across from hers was empty again. This time, it felt like it belonged that way. For now. A week passed. The wind kept its habits. The fence still leaned where it always had. The well groaned the same tired sound each morning. Nothing in Dust Hollow changed much. Not on the surface. Iris worked like she always did, up before the light. Coffee poured into the same chipped cup. The paper still folded under it, though she no longer needed to read it. She knew every number by heart now. She didn't go into town, didn't ask after anything. The barn stayed quiet at night. No footsteps shifting in the hay, no extra plate to wash. The chair across from hers remained empty, and she stopped looking at it. Mostly. On the 7th morning, she heard wheels. Not the loose rattle of a supply wagon, not the creak of old wood hauling grain. These were smooth, even, the kind of sound that carried weight without strain. She stepped outside. A carriage stood at the gate. Dark wood, clean lines, horses brushed and well kept, out of place against the dust and dry grass. The driver held the reins steady, and from the back, Victor Hale stepped down. He wore the same worn coat, same frayed cuffs, same dust along the hem. Only the way he stood had changed. No hesitation this time, no borrowed name to hold him up. He closed the carriage door behind him and walked to the gate. Stopped there. Didn't open it. Iris didn't move closer. They stood with the distance between them, the fence marking it plain. I came in the carriage, he said, so you'd know who was standing here. The wind slipped through the wire between them. But I didn't bring it for you, he added. She watched him. He rested his hands lightly on the top rail, not crossing over. I came to ask, he said, not to fix anything. No talk of the bank, no mention of the debt. Not a word about what he could do, just that. Iris's eyes shifted once toward the carriage, then back to him. You already did enough fixing, she said. There wasn't heat in it, just truth. He nodded. I won't do that again. Silence settled. A loose board tapped somewhere behind the house. The wind found it and let it go. Victor took a breath, then let it out slow. I was wrong, he said. About how to ask. About what I was asking. He didn't step forward, didn't reach. I thought if I stripped everything away, I'd find out what was real, he said. But all I did was take something from you that wasn't mine to take. Iris's fingers tightened slightly against the doorframe. My pride wasn't yours to test, she said. I know. He held her gaze. And I won't ask you to forget it. Another pause. Long enough for the horses to shift their weight, for the driver to glance away, pretending not to listen. Victor's voice lowered, just a touch. I don't want you to choose me because I can solve things, he said. And I won't put anything on the table to make it easier. He looked down at the coat for a moment, brushing a thumb over the worn seam. The man you fed, he said. The one who worked your fence and sat at your table. That's the only one I'm bringing here. He looked back up. If that's not enough, I'll leave. No promise followed it. No bargain. Just that. The wind moved again, softer this time. Iris stood there watching him. The same man, not the same distance. Something in her face shifted, though it didn't show all at once. She stepped back inside. Victor didn't move, didn't call after her. The screen door creaked as it swung open, then closed behind her. Inside, the house held the same quiet it always had. The table waited. The cup still sat where she'd left it. She lifted it, set it aside. The folded paper stayed underneath, untouched. Iris reached for a second plate, held it for a moment, then set it down across from her own. She turned back toward the door, opened it. Victor stood where she'd left him. She didn't smile, didn't nod, just stepped aside and left the door open. You remember how this works? She said. The words landed simple, but they carried everything. Victor crossed the threshold slowly, like it mattered where his boots fell. He took off his hat, set it down, pulled out the chair, and sat. The wind passed through the hollow again, softer now, like it had finally found a place to rest. And if you stand there long enough, you can almost see it. The dust settling, the table set for two, a door left open without a word spoken. Maybe you've known a moment like that. A moment where someone could have fixed everything with ease, but chose not to. A moment where what mattered wasn't what could be given, but what was offered without promise or price. Just a chair pulled out. Just a place at the table. Iris didn't forget what was taken from her. Victor didn't pretend it hadn't cost her something, but somewhere between the silence and the truth, something steadier took root. Not grand, not loud, just real. And maybe that's the part that stays with you, that sometimes love doesn't arrive when everything is right. It arrives when someone finally stands still long enough to be seen as they are, and stays, even when they could walk away. So if you were standing where she stood, would you have opened that door? Tell me where you're watching from, and what you would have done. There are more stories waiting just like this one, quiet, human, and closer to home than they seem. If this one stayed with you a little while, you might find the next one does too.